Whenever I first saw this tweet from the Payday Twitter account, I kind of thought the person making it has balls of steel because, well, it's not an in-universe joke, and it absolutely comes off as a bit of a response to what their CEO just did. And that's because, like with so many stories, to find out what a company actually thinks, we've got to dig up how they talk to their investors. But this time, when I did that, actually a little bit more turned up than I thought. To kick things off, Payday 3 was obviously a top contender for worst launch of recent years. It was a total disaster. Now, another big disaster, the best disaster, is No Man's Sky, because in the case of that, right, they put in the hard yards, and over years and years of years, they had the ingoodening. If Sean Murray got cold feet and pulled funding, then obviously there would be a big problem, and we would not have had the ingoodening. And that's where Payday 3 comes in. It had a disastrous launch that is best seen in the Steam numbers. It utterly cratered in terms of players, the score is awful, but that score has actually slowly increased. Well, I should say it had been slowly increasing. That just changed, and the community are now really worried. That's because they just saw what the CEO told investors. This is from their interim earnings report, right? The level of investment during Payday 3's first year in the market, both through DLCs and Operation Medic Bag, has been at an elevated level. Ahead of year 2, we are confident in being able to continue delivering amounts of value to our players with a significantly lower level of investment. Yeah, less money. They're spending less money in the game. So if you're a player, you're obviously going to be worried and suspicious. Now, here's what you need to know about all of that to make his statement make sense. The elevated level of spending is because the launch of Payday 3 was obviously a goddamn disaster. That said, it did actually sell at least enough to make sure that Starbreeze reported profitability for the first time since 2018. But obviously, while people did have it in their Steam account, they weren't playing it. In fact, if you take a look at this chart, you see they were instead just playing Payday 2. And the reasons why are fairly simple, right? Payday 3 was different to Payday 2 in ways that people didn't really like. Payday 2 also had years of DLC, refinement content, all that stuff. And then progression, rewards, all of those undermined the maps and heists that Payday 3 had. And as if the game having bad fundamentals wasn't enough, the third-party service provider also completely shat the bed. It was really, really bad. Months followed, and then there are two things. One in February, one in March, right? So in February 2024, Operation Medic Bag kicked off. And actually, it's pretty good. It was a strike team of devs assembled with one mission to work only in fixing player problems, usually right in games. That's not how it works often. Like, devs will have to squeeze in fixes every now and then. That's one of the reasons why often you won't really see games be fixed up as fast as you would really expect, because obviously the things those devs were scheduled to work on otherwise, well, guess what? Those are things the company can sell. Anyway, Medic Bag was a good plan. The problem is that 1 month later, the CEO of Starbreeze, the guy who of course greenlit this plan, well, he was removed by the board after the game's failure to retain audiences. And it's tempting to be very doom and gloom about it because he did see there were problems and kick off a Medic Bag, right? But do you know what this actually is? This is consequences, something that we generally do not see, right? Whenever there's irresponsible decisions being made, people aren't really willing to accept the truth. Well, often what ends up happening, say like a Bobby Kotick or whatever, doesn't actually matter if anything goes bad to Bobby or Andrew Wilson of EA. Here, well, yeah, it actually did matter. That's kind of a good thing. Going back to the story though, Medic Bag was obviously not part of the budget that they assumed they would be spending for the launch of this game, so obviously they've had to spend a whole bunch of money in that, and also support the game, developing content, which then costs the money they did plan to spend. What's cool is we can dig into their investor report, and you see, so that you're not misled in things like this, well, I have partnered with today's sponsor, where I actually just learned another way that Google might be broken up. So it actually turns out the FTC have got very big plans, and understanding stories like this is next level with ground.news. So let's take this most recent Google development, right? Now, I'd heard that there were problems with Chrome and paid for by default searches in other browsers, but this is actually about Google's advertising tech. Now, that's pretty interesting to me, and it also means that news sites may have a bit of an economic bias. So where ground's amazing is I can see bias distribution rated by 3 independent agencies. 53% center, 33% left, and 15% right. So if you're exposed to more right-wing outlets, well, you might actually miss this important story. Now, I can see that 67% are rated high factuality, and only 7% are independent. And of course, it's good to know where the funding sources come from, especially with a story like this. Now, the AP is rated very factual, and 13 other outlets actually cited them. And it's fun looking at the headlines. AP ran with, "Judge to hear arguments on whether Google's advertising tech constitutes a monopoly." That's descriptive, it's realistic. Now, DigiDays, well, they went with, "Google's ad tech empire rests on how well it can make these key arguments." That's obviously a bit more dramatic. Now, honestly, I'm kind of biased towards ad tech empire, but it's important for me to see other framings given how, online echo chambers have basically undermined our shared sense of reality. Ground does all the heavy lifting here for me. So on a single topic, they ensure I'm not misled, but big picture, they do so much. Between their homepage, interest pages, like say for gaming or for technology in the blind spot feed, they essentially take the totality of news and they make it digestible, balanced, and put it in context. I use their Vantage plan, and right now, go to ground.news/Bellular and you can get 50% off unlimited access to the Vantage plan. It's the best deal of the year for my subscribers, and it's only available for a limited time. That's the plan that I use. Oh boy, the investor report. Running Payday 3 while fixing Payday 3 cost more than they planned for, and that has eaten into their profitability. They had been releasing paid DLCs alongside free DLCs, which is an inherently expensive thing to do, and the way they fixed all of this is not like other games. As an example, you might remember Battlefield 2042, a total unmitigated disaster, right? Utter shit show, and you're right too, it was awful. Now what happened is they just stopped shipping content. DICE instead spent ages fixing the core of the game, and Halo Infinite kind of did the same. Obviously, in the case of Halo Infinite, it just kind of withered in the vine. Battlefield has not really popped off massively, but it's actually won some people back. Here, though, Starbreeze have actually had to do both things at once. Fix the game and build the game in a way where they can earn money by selling content. You see, Starbreeze is a company who have historically had extremely insane, ridiculous story for another day financial stresses, so they needed to keep money coming in. They needed to sell new content. In the investor report, Payday 3 sales accounted for $6.2 million USD in income for the company, and that's actually more than half of their income year to date. Payday 2, right? The very much older game was at $2.9 million. Okay, that's like just under half, but the idea that is only earning just a bit over double your old game, that is absolutely brutal, and now we see they are clearly unwilling to continue pouring money into this because they need profitability. But there is actually another pressure in this story. That's their other game, their Dungeons and Dragons heist game, and the costs of making it, and the licensing, all of that stuff. So the company are not prepared, it seems, for their financial circumstances because they did not assume they would have to pay for Operation Medic Bag, but Payday 3 is right now half of their income, so it's not like they can go and kill it and move on to the Dungeons and Dragons thing, which won't be out for ages. And so support's going to continue, but it's going to be different. And that is why when you take a look at game creators who, cover this game a lot, like say Red Archer and The Knowingly, well, those are not happy thumbnails, and that shows us that the confidence of the community has been massively undermined. And knowing that, Starbreeze attempted to answer. Let's talk about the live stream then. So, working in Payday 3 and then seeing your CEO's comments leading to an online shit show must not have been nice. So what happened is their head of community hosted a live stream. They invited the CEO to the live stream, and here's the rub. Medic Bag is winding down, and that's what's leading to less investment this year. Depending on how this year's content performs, the investments may increase next year, and they've said that no money that is made by Payday 3 is going into anything other than Payday 3, especially not the D&D project, which I think is quite interesting. You usually get no transparency about where money goes within a company. That's kind of wild. Now, we do not know the terms of their deals, right, with Payday 3, but we can do some quick forensics. So we know that the Embracer Group recouped their investment after only 2 weeks in Payday 3. That means that meaningful funds will now be going to Starbreeze. But here's where it really gets interesting. Embracer Group are actually not the only party to this story. They're not the only stakeholder. 505 Games published Payday 2, and they've actually got a stake in net revenue, and that includes, right, Payday 3. Now, we actually understand that they have not received a penny. They have not received a penny from Payday 3. And that means that, likely because they are below Starbreeze in the waterfall, that Starbreeze have just not covered their costs yet, which absolutely means they're going to be worried about their finances. What do we make of this, right? Well, the lack of specifics on the offline mode or a concrete future plan blows. Medic bag scaling down is definitely worrying, but more content is a good thing, and I think it's actually helped that at the same time as all of this happened, they announced that their next free heist is a rebuild of the Payday 1 First World Bank heist. I don't know if you've played it, but that was my introduction to the franchise, and it was pretty damn good. And to close off the live stream, they said something very simple. If we build it, hopefully they will come. But obviously, for that to work, they're going to need money. So let's take a look at the money. Okay, hey, I actually have a question for you. Would you buy DLC if you knew that the money was going back into the game's development? Almost like, say, when an esports prize pool is funded by Player Cosmetics. To be honest with you, I kinda would. And when the Payday 3 account tweeted, "We need money," that's the point. No money, no game. Somebody actually tweeted, let's just say, holy beep, Payday 3 is already a DLC fest. The Payday Twitter account quote tweeted them, "How are we supposed to make money? Print it in counterfeit." Yeah, it's kind of gutsy. And you look at the Steam page and it's really bad. 19 DLCs. But actually, if you look close, it's a little different. They have a humongous optics problem. What you find, right, is 4 chapters, 4 heists, 4 cosmetic packs, and 4 weapon packs, and a season pass that covers all 4 chapters, and Steam rounds it all off with a lovely £98.52 add all DLC to cart button. So it makes it feel like they just want £100, maybe what, $120, $130? That's actually not what they want though, because when you take a look at the details, it's entirely different. As it turns out, each chapter has a heist, a weapon pack, and a cosmetic. What they let you do is buy the chapter to get everything, or if you only want the content, you can buy only the heist. You don't actually need to get the weapons or the cosmetic. And basically, for everything, you can just get the season pass, which is like $24.99. And that means that Steam's add all to cart £100 thing, that actually hurts them here, because the total ask from them is not £98.52. It's $24.99 for the season pass that contains all the things. And that's what's interesting. Most companies stuff DLC full of cosmetics, and basically that's part of why they end up being kinda pricey. I mean, we all know the feeling of being excited for a DLC, we buy it, and you just kind of think like, really? Is that all the runtime I had for the amount of money that I spent? Oh, and here I am with a bunch of random cosmetics I don't want or care for. Well, here Starbreeze are literally giving you the option of buying what you want and only what you want. Now that is ostensibly very, very customer friendly, right? If you just only want the weapons but nothing else, just buy that. So that is consumer friendly, but Steam's UI actually makes it look really, really, really bad, which definitely makes me think, Steam, do we need to do something about the DLC UI so that developers can like accurately communicate what's going on there? Because I look at this and it's obviously going to damage the game. So that's the money situation. Now let's tie this whole story in a neat bow. Their lead production person told PC Games End that Payday 3 suffers from doing too many things at once, and what they really need to do is the core fantasy and making every heist more tense, open-ended, and rewarding. But the problem is, you've been burned before, I've been burned before, why the hell should we actually listen? And that is where the team have got a direct response. One where, well, often you look at a company's FAQ and it's like, come on guys, you just invented a bunch of softballs to throw yourself. This one is kind of not that. Their D&D project sure looks like a way to abandon Payday 3 for surefire money. This is what the FAQ says. It opens with a question: why should I as a customer spend money on Baxter when this is how you handled Payday 3, your supposed top priority? And then the response in their FAQ says that, yeah, Payday 3's launch was in fact terrible, and terrible is their own words. They say they've worked hard to fix it, and they want to regain players with actions, not words. And that's where it's fun, because it's the CEO's words that spooked people. Their actions count more than ever. And so tell me this: what would it take for you to believe that the money you spend goes back into a game? And I mean that literally. What would a company have to show you in order to actually prove it? And when I try to think about a sustainable business model in gaming, the idea of a customer actually knowing that they're supporting a developer and that they're supporting the game and the content that they want, well, I think that would go a pretty long way to mending things. But you know what's not being mended? Do you know what's actually really bad? The state of games preservation. Our video on that absolutely exploded. If you have not caught it, watch it next.